Franz Kafka, in his short and quite tormented and troubled life, produced some of the greatest writings of the 20th century and is considered to this day one of the greatest writers of modern times. What was triggering Kafka's chart when he made a breakthrough creative outburst on the night of 22nd September 1912? Kafka wrote the story Das Urteil, the judgment. In the course of that year, Kafka wrote The Metamorphosis, a story about a traveling salesman who wakes up one morning to find himself transformed into a monstrous vermin. This work is regarded by critics as one of the seminal works of fiction in the 20th century. Kafka was going through his first Saturn return. Here you can see that Saturn is exactly conjunct his natal Saturn at 4 degrees of Gemini. Gemini, the storyteller, the witness, ruled by Mercury, messenger of the gods. And Mercury here lies in Gemini, thus it's a very powerful Mercury because it's in its own sign. Now the Saturn return takes place in Kafka's 10th house, the house of your public persona. We call it the house of career. I like to see it and the planets, and our friend Kafka here has got plenty of planets in his 10th house as your mission, your calling in life. The reason I refer to it as a mission is that if you heed that calling, it's the world needs you. You have a gift and you have souls out there that are going to benefit from what you have to give. What is the first Saturn return about in any case? Saturn has to do with the process of maturation and with defining what our goals are. Sometimes it's considered malefic because Saturn also has to do with death, and it's the harsh taskmaster. Saturn also has to do with limitation, separation. It requires focus and hard work. In Saturn times, you feel that you gotta go it alone. You can't really rely on someone else to do the work for you, right? Because it's like forcing you to mature. Saturn isn't bad, but it is hard. And Kafka was working on his drafts, and he was working hard at them. If you think of when you're in your 20s, before the Saturn return, there's many options that are open for you. You're beginning your adult life, and you feel like you're going to live forever. And then Saturn comes along. Saturn is the principle of reality and of mortality, and you realize that you're not going to live forever, and therefore you need to commit, sift through the various options of, maybe partners, potential partners, different vocation possibilities. This understanding that now I have to limit my options in order to become really good at something. Many people decide to become parents in their Saturn return, and boy, is that a huge commitment, right? People can go back to school, as it were, and finish their degree. So there's a theme that describes this time in a person's life, but then there'll be a fast-moving planet making a conjunction or a tight aspect to an important part of the chart, and that's when the bigger theme comes to fruition. And here we see that on this day, a few days before, a few days after, transiting Mercury was conjunct Kafka's natal Uranus, transiting Mercury in its own sign, because Mercury rules 2 signs. So Mercury is about language, perception, our mental understanding, writing, speaking, expressing our voice. Then it lands on Uranus, and we have the first Saturn return. Uranus represents genius,